Welcome to Focus on the Candidates. I'm Cynthia Pooler. My guest today is Alan Collinge, who heads Student Loan Justice, and he ran for president as a write-in on that issue. And he's here to talk about the SAVE plan. So, what's going on with the student loan crisis right now?
Well, it's probably a bigger headline than it really needs to be. So there was something called the SAVE plan, which was one of the new income-driven repayment plans for student loans. And I'm not even going to bother you with all the details about it, but it's something that Biden put through, and then it was sued in various courts across the country. Put 8 million people into jeopardy who signed up for it. So 8 million people signed up, and then now it's just not happening. And lo and behold, last week, the Trump administration basically officially killed it. So this leaves 8 million people in complete limbo on their student loans. Interest is now accruing on those loans, and nobody knows what to do. And this is something that I predicted on November 5th or whenever the last election was. Upon Donald Trump winning that election, it was a foregone conclusion that SAVE plan would never go through. So quite frankly, to me, it's kind of a nothing burger. And, I should even say, Cynthia, taking a step back, all of the income-driven repayment plans, either that we've seen now that are in existence now, or that have been proposed, including the SAVE plan and including Trump's repayment assistance plan, the RAP, none of those income-driven repayment plans are worth the paper they are written on, because 20 years of experience shows that the overwhelming majority of people who try for those programs wind up getting disqualified out by a Department of Education and its servicers who they don't want to cancel loans. They never have. And so they do everything they can do to baffle and bamboozle people and get them to sort of throw up their hands and fall out of the programs. So my best estimate is that of all the IDRs up to this point, something like 90+%, over 90%, well over, have been disqualified out of those programs before getting the benefit. So they essentially get kicked to the curb, and all the interest that accrued while they were trying, that comes right back, and they wind up owing far, far more than had they never even tried in the first place.
Would you
So the
say
whole
it
thing
was?
is just terrible. Yep.
Would you say it was the permanent bureaucracy in Washington that's responsible for this?
I think it absolutely is. The permanent Washington, particularly the Department of Education. Don't believe anything you hear about them dismantling the Department of Education. I mean, that's just false. The student loan program is still fully intact. The Department of Education is still there, still doing what they have always done, which is completely wreck student loan borrowers. In the absence of bankruptcy protections, the absence of statutes of limitations, this is under really the most unconstitutional, predatory lending regime that this country has ever before seen. So permanent Washington is doing quite well through Trump, through Biden, through Obama and Bush before them.
So it's a bipartisan issue then.
Well, it absolutely should be. If you look at student loan borrowers, they are not fringe liberal people by and large, like the mainstream media would have us believe. Uh, in fact, my best estimate is that something like probably around 70%, 60 to 70% of all student loan borrowers are either Republican or independent. And, Cynthia, if you look at the worst hurt states, it's not Massachusetts, it's not, Washington State or Oregon or California. No, no, no. The worst hurt states are red states. So Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Texas, Missouri, all the red states, particularly in the South, are being hurt far, far worse by these loans than than blue states are. So it's absolutely a bipartisan problem. Really, it's a nonpartisan problem. I think it's just disgusting the way both the Democrats appear to be claiming, they want us to believe that we're fighting for them, student loan borrowers. But it's not true. They're not fighting for us. And the Republicans have been pushed to the other side of that issue to where they're just terrible also. Both parties are terrible, Cynthia. I call it the uniparty. It's kind of a good cop, bad cop thing. At the end of the day, they're both cops. And they're both fighting for this lending program.
To stay in
That's kind of
place.
an insult to cops, by the way, I should say. I would
Uh-huh.
call them weasels, but that would be an insult to weasels too. So yeah, this student loan scam is just beyond anything we've ever seen in this country.
So if it's hitting red states, that's throwing a dagger at MAGA, wouldn't you say?
It absolutely is. And I think that they're finally starting to, the Republicans, I should say, are finally starting to understand that this is their base that they are wrecking. Um, the people of Florida, for example, the Department of Education takes more interest. So that's basically profit, right? Taking more interest on student loans out of the state of Florida than Disney World brings in every year. The Magic Kingdom, it's one of the state's largest employers. And the Department of Education takes more out of Florida than Disney brings in. More out of the state of Texas than Teslas that are built in Texas every year. Taking more interest out of the state of Maine than all the lobsters produced in Maine every year. And I could go on down the list to all 50 states, and you'll see that the Department of Education, the amount of interest only that they are taking out of the states rivals or even exceeds major industries in those states. So I'm hoping the governors of all stripes will finally wake up to what's happening to their states. It's really kind of a state sovereignty issue at this point.
So Marjorie Taylor Greene has been very outspoken lately about, the war in Ukraine, the war Gaza. Has she said anything about, and she's from, a southern state. So has she said anything about how the student loan debt crisis is affecting the people in her state?
I'm really glad you asked that, Cynthia. Marjorie Taylor Greene was pretty much against us most of the time she was in Congress. She was just, holding the conservative line, voting for Project 2025, etc. But, she's from Georgia, and Georgia is, by some metrics, by far the worst state in the nation. And so I don't know exactly what happened between her and Trump or whatever the case may be, but I was very thrilled, quite frankly, to see when she announced that she's going to leave office at the end of the year. In that letter, she decried the fact that people are being ruined by their student loan debt. And I was like, wow, that's really something. So now, just in the past 2 to 3 months, Cynthia, we've seen people like Joe Rogan, like Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, um, a bunch of conservatives like David Sachs, I think Peter Thiel, pretty recently. Many, many, many Republicans have finally come around, and they're starting to tell the truth about student loans, and they're starting to finally. We're finally starting to see a pierce in the veil of all the propaganda that's been surrounding this issue. People are finally starting to understand. But it's really too bad, now she's leaving office. So what good is she to us? I don't know. But I do appreciate that letter that she wrote.
You're mentioning big names. Have any of them contacted you, or have you contacted any of them?
I've reached out to all of those people multiple times. I have not heard from any of those people that I just mentioned. Unfortunately, I've been on Fox News a couple times, and Tucker Carlson really nailed it. Not only recently, but even as far back as 2019. Um, but yeah, I'd love to talk to those people. I would love to inform them and spread the word among conservatives. Since really the beginning of this year, 90% of my effort has been towards informing and educating conservatives about why they need to forget everything they think they know about student loans and realize that by fighting against the borrowers, by wagging their finger at the people being wrecked by this thing, they're only helping the colleges, they're only helping the Department of Education, and they're only helping the lending industry that stands behind them. And that's killing their states, it's wrecking the country. And conservatives need to come around because they will be annihilated in this upcoming election next year.
And they're also benefiting the colleges besides with all this influx of money, right?
Well, that's exactly right. They claim they don't like the colleges and defund the colleges and socialism and communism, all that stuff, all those talking points. But when every time they wag their finger at a student loan borrower, instead of attacking the colleges who are the primary beneficiary of this loan scam, they're really just fighting for the colleges. And so it's completely broken public conversation right now. But hopefully it's getting better. I'm seeing it getting better. Jerome Powell, another really good example. He's a conservative guy, chairman of the Federal Reserve. He also called pretty unambiguously for the return of bankruptcy rights to student loans just in the
Mhm.
past few months.
You and I have been talking about this for quite a while, and yet there's more than 40 million Americans that are still strapped with student loans. There's got to be a breaking point at some time.
I think the breaking point happened years ago, Cynthia. I think this lending system failed catastrophically somewhere around 2019, 2020. I think the pandemic was the nail in the coffin. So right now, for example, uh, only around 25 or 26% of all student loan borrowers are even paying at all. So, in other words, close to 75% of all borrowers are not making payments. And that's lower today than it was a year ago. And I think it'll be lower again still a year from now than it is today. So, and everybody, I'm not saying anything that the people in Washington, D.C. don't know. They know this full well. So the lending
Right.
system is broken. The breaking point was years ago, uh, and it's just kind of downward spiraling into oblivion now. Uh, I think the people in Washington D.C. I think they don't know what to do. Thankfully, Trump announced that he's not garnishing Social Security. I kind of doubt they will ever garnish Social Security again. I haven't heard of anybody getting their wages garnished yet either.
Mhm.
So I can read between the lines pretty well after 20 years of doing this, Cynthia. And I think it's just a matter of time before somebody finally capitulates in Washington and acknowledges publicly that, yep, this one is done, ladies and gentlemen. This lending program is toast.
So
Hopefully sooner
take,
than later, but yep.
what's going to take for that to happen?
Well, we need good, honest people in office. Good, honest people, including the unelecteds, working at the Department of Education. Some honest college presidents who know the data. Um, it's just going to take a few people to finally start speaking out and acknowledging this thing publicly, and I think it'll be all downhill from there, as they say.
But all those people that you mentioned, those groups of people that you mentioned, they're fearful for their jobs if they become vocal, right?
Well, that's true, but the truth is also a very important thing. And people have consciences. And, when they see people that they're supposed to be serving, killing themselves, declaring war on the federal government, that actually happened, by the way. Google Justin Moans. This guy declared war against the federal government as a direct result of his student loans. When they see all the carnage and the pain that's happening out in the country, at least a few of them, I would hope, would step forward and start speaking out. People like Wayne Johnson. Wayne was the head of federal student aid during Trump's first term. He's a conservative from Georgia. Well, he quit his job working for the Department of Education, and he turned around and started demanding the return of bankruptcy protections to the loans. He was even calling for broad student loan cancellation. And I should say this is sort of breaking news a little bit. This guy Wayne Johnson, a great truth teller, he has launched a class action lawsuit against the Department of Education because of the just rampant abuse that we've seen with regards to the Fair Credit Reporting Act. That's a federal government has sovereign immunity against challenges, against claims for many, many, many things. But last year, the Supreme Court ruled that federal agencies can be sued for violations of the Fair Credit Reporting Act.
Mhm.
And so there's a lawsuit that Wayne just started. I would urge everybody who's seen their credit score take a dive this year to check it out. Studentloanlegalaction.org.
Do you know him?
Yeah, I'm pretty friendly with him actually. I've talked to him ever since I saw him do a famous Tucker Carlson interview with Fox News in 2019. And here's another link for you while I'm spitting links out. So it's bit.ly slash hear it from Tucker, all one word, HEAR, it from Tucker, hear it from Tucker. And you can see the interview for yourself. So yeah, no, I'm very thrilled to see that happen, and hopefully this case will really wake some people up and uh, show the way forward for the other conservatives out there.
Has there been any lib? You said that the senator from um Missouri, he was sponsoring the bill, right?
Yeah, that's very true. Josh Hawley and John Cornyn, Josh Hawley from Missouri, John Cornyn from Texas, they sponsored a bipartisan bill that would have returned bankruptcy rights to student loans and would have also held the colleges financially liable for discharges. It was a great bill. I'm still so angry at the Democrats. By the way, it was a democratically. The prime sponsor was Dick Durbin, a Democrat.
Mhm.
The two prime co-sponsors were John Cornyn and Josh Hawley. At the 11th hour in 2022, Dick Durbin, under pressure from the colleges, killed that bill. But it, the time is better now than ever to reintroduce and pass that bill. What the bill would do is return bankruptcy rights to student loans with a 10-year waiting period. It would also require colleges to pay up to 50% for discharges. So the only real modification that I'm suggesting they do is make the rich colleges pay. Make the Harvards, the Ivy Leagues, maybe the top 20 schools in terms of the size of their endowment and their other cash reserves, make the rich schools pay for bankruptcy discharges. Um,
I- I'm gonna say a couple of names. Nancy Pelosi, she's retiring. What has her position been on student loans all these years?
Nancy Pelosi has been a snake in the grass
Oh
against
boy.
student loan borrowers. That Supreme Court case where Biden lost because of their attempt to cancel student loans by executive order, it was Nancy Pelosi who essentially gave the Supreme Court the permission structure necessary to rule against that loan cancellation initiative. Um, it was terrible, when that court was decided. They literally quoted Nancy Pelosi when she said the president can't cancel loans. They quoted her in their opinion. And so, yeah, Nancy Pelosi's terrible. Susan Rice is terrible. Kamala Harris, all these California Republicans, or sorry, Democrats, for some reason, um, they are not what they appear to be. Certainly not on the student loan issue.
Let's talk about the leadership in the House. Mike Johnson.
He's MIA. He's completely MIA on this issue, and it's really too bad because Louisiana is probably one of the top 5 worst states with student loan debt. So if you took all the, I'm not going to remember this exactly correctly, but if you take all the lobster, or no, sorry, all the shrimp,
Uh-huh.
all the tobacco, all the soybean, and I think all the corn that Louisiana exports every year, the Department of Education takes more than that in interest out of the people of Louisiana every year. So Mike Johnson's been a bust. In fact, I can only name maybe two or three members of Congress of either political party who I still have any sort of respect for.
What about Hakeem Jeffries?
You know, he's been sort of towing this Democratic line, and you know not to trust a politician on student loans when they keep talking about college affordability. That's a nonsense word. That's just a fake Washington word, which can mean basically whatever they want it to mean. I've spoken with Hakeem directly at least once or twice, and I tell them you've got to return bankruptcy rights to student loans. And then the response I get back from them is, "Oh, bankruptcy is very important." They never say that they're going to fight for it, though, and it's really too bad because the Democratic Party had the return of bankruptcy to student loans in their party platform in 2016, in
Mhm.
2020.
Well,
But in 2024, they took it out. And I haven't heard any, well, I've heard very few members of Congress among the Democrats even mention bankruptcy and student loans in the same sentence since like 2020. Elizabeth
this
Warren is a complete fake, by the way. I don't know if you're going to mention her or not, but she's
who?
Elizabeth Warren.
Oh,
She
you
taught bankruptcy law at Harvard for many years, but she was one of the key people who killed that bipartisan bankruptcy bill I just mentioned. She refused to say publicly whether she supported it. And then on the very same day that that bill was supposed to have a hearing in Congress, she did an impromptu press conference to tout her own student loan bankruptcy bill that never had a chance of going anywhere, by the way, and it of course went nowhere. Um, and right after that press conference that she held, they canceled the hearing for our bankruptcy bill. So again, I can read between the lines. Elizabeth Warren went out of her way to sabotage a perfectly good bankruptcy bill, despite the fact that she taught at Harvard bankruptcy law, no less.
so what's going to happen in this session before the midterms?
Well, it's anybody's ball game. It's the Wild West out there with the federal student loan program. Everybody knows it's failed. I think the Republicans know full well that they are going to be decimated in the midterms. All things being equal, unless they do something very real, and they could endear themselves to many, many of the 40 million distressed student loan borrowers out there if they would only simply return the bankruptcy rights that the founding fathers demanded in the Constitution, return those to student loans. And yeah, I would be perfectly fine with them holding the colleges financially accountable for that. Um, I mean, in my view, it's really the best and one of the only moves that the Republicans can really make at this point if they want to avoid catastrophe and disaster in the midterms.
In the last presidential election, you were a write-in for president. So the next few months in Congress, it's going to be interesting. So can you come back from time to time and update everybody on what's going on?
I would love to, Cynthia. Things are happening fast, and hopefully, when I have a little more heat in my environs here, I'll be able to do a longer look.
Okay. So we'll talk again soon. You've been listening to Alan. Oh, give the your contact information.
It's just that right there, studentloanjustice.org. You,
Okay.
you can find us from there.
Okay. So you've been listening to Alan Collinge, founder of Student Loan Justice. I'm Cynthia Pooler. This is Focus on the Candidates. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel And thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a great day. Alan, go find the warm
I
place.
know. Okay, I'll talk to you soon.